friends. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Booking It with me, Jonna, your fave. I have with me someone who a lot of you might know if you went to St. Joe. Some of you might not know if you did not go to St. Joe. Someone who was a professor at the college that I went to that sadly closed the year that I graduated, which was so fun for all of us, I think. I personally never had him as a professor, but I have sat through a few of his lectures, and they were the ones that I did not sleep through. So that's that's what's really important is I did not sleep through your lectures because I slept through a few. I can't even tell you. But I have with me Michael Nichols, everyone. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you coming on the show to chat about your books.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. When you reached out to me and told me that I'd seen on Facebook that you had written a couple of books, and then you were like, I've written 3 books. And I was like, bro, I've only gotten through one. And that
Well,
took forever.
oh yeah, well it takes time. It takes time.
Yeah, and especially it seems like with the books that you write, considering they probably have a lot of research that goes into them.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So if you guys don't know, Dr. Nichols, right? Dr. Nichols.
Mhm.
Yes. Dr. Nichols, or as we so lovingly called him at St. Joe, Baby Nichols. I'm sure you heard that name a few times walking around St. Joe's campus.
Once or twice, but not a problem.
Ah, all right. He's written 3 books. One called Malleable Mara: Transformations of a Buddhist Symbol of Evil. Secondly, he wrote Religion and Myth in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I wore my Marvel shirt. And then I guess I can mention this one since it's the newest one, but I got big beef with Batman, so like it's fine. But it's called Batman and the Classics: Echoes of Mythology, Literature, and Philosophy in the Comics and Films.
Not a fan of Batman, huh?
No, I don't like Batman. He's not my fave, but it's okay. It's okay. I'll forgive you because you wrote about Marvel first.
Okay.
As long as is Batman your favorite superhero?
No, no, I
Okay.
wouldn't say favorite. I would not
Okay.
say favorite.
Okay.
He's interesting to me, kind of like as a cautionary example. He's not someone that I think that anybody ought to emulate. And the fact that he's so popular and has all these dark aspects to him is what really fascinates me. Why people are drawn to that kind of a character.
See, someone who's on my side. I'm always trying to convince people to be a hater on Batman, and nobody ever wants to be a hater. So I appreciate you semi hating against Batman with me. So I appreciate that. All right. So you is your doctorate's in religion, right? Like religious.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Comparative religion. Yeah,
Comparative religion. So obviously that's why we have a lot of the mythology and all of that stuff in there. Let's start with your most recent, the Batman one, because I'm sure it's the one that's fresh on your brain. Um,
sure.
what gave you the idea to kind of dig deep into Batman and do like comparative, like comparing him to like other things in mythology and literature and things like that?
Sure. Well, for quite a while, I had been using Batman as an example in classes. There were a couple times in those core lectures at St. Joe, I actually used him as an example to talk about different things that we saw in some of the books we were studying in core. Like, for instance, when we were doing Beowulf, looking at the interaction between Batman and the Joker and comparing that to Beowulf and Grendel. And so after doing that with a couple of different Batman stories, and I taught a popular culture and religion class at St. Joe and used a Batman graphic novel in it. And after teaching them for a few times, I thought, there may be something even deeper there. There may be even further graphic novels of Batman that you could compare to some of these worldwide mythologies, philosophies, and so forth. And as I started to do the investigation, there really were. And so the text, I'm going to go ahead and show the cover on here for those who want to see it.
It's
Um,
so nice. I love that
I
cover.
love the cover. I love the cover. Um, library Batman symbol. How could you go wrong, right?
Literally.
But as I started to spin out more and dig more into other Batman graphic novels, the connections, say, between what you see in The Killing Joke with the origin story of the Joker and, say, existentialist philosophy, or The Dark Knight Returns and Beowulf, or the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche. The parallels are just so striking to me that I thought there was more than just a couple of examples you could use in the classroom, but that you could build out a whole book exploring these. And so most of the book is about graphic novels, but the last chapter does deal with the Christopher Nolan movies from the mid 2000s there, and looks at some of those connections as well. So um, hopefully people will enjoy it. Those who are teachers themselves and want to think about how to bring Batman stories into the classroom, you'll find maybe some ideas on connections you could make. But so the goal was really to explain how a character that we see as being more of a modern one, because oftentimes when I used Batman stuff in classes, students were grateful because they're like, ah, it's a modern connection that we can understand. Because you may not have heard of Beowulf, you may not have heard of the Odyssey, but everybody's heard of Batman. And looking at how a character like that, who has been around for several decades, has got connections that go back way, way further than that, talking about what makes a hero, what is justice, a lot of these perennial questions that people have been asking in philosophy and mythology throughout human history. You see those get revisited in different ways in Batman stories. And so exploring all of that did take a lot of research, but also a lot of fun at the same time. And hopefully, people who read the book will have fun as well, seeing some of those connections.
Nice. So just give me a little taste of who you kind of compared Batman to in your writing. Because I know there's
Sure.
probably multiple, but give me like your favorite one.
One of the favorite parts of the book is when I look at a series from the early 2000s, Justice League. It's called Tower of Babel. And it's a story where Batman has for years been gathering information on his allies to use against them. And he has all of these countermeasures just to, he claims just in case they go bad, he can use against them. But some of their enemies discover these plots and use the techniques against the Justice League to disable them. And so that story I compare to Machiavelli, who's a Renaissance Italian thinker who thought that those in charge really owed nothing to those that they ruled and were justified in using any means necessary to keep people down and to plot against your enemies at all times. And I compared this also to Sun Tzu in The Art of War, who also approves the use of spies, approves the use of strategies and what we might see as underhanded tactics, but to always be one step ahead of not just your enemies, but your allies as well. All of that really seems to play into the paranoid way of thinking that Batman so often employs, where he is a loner, partly by choice, but uh, not many people would want to be around him then after doing these sorts of things. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way. Um, so that was one really fun part of the book, was taking that story and comparing it to these other thinkers who maybe people have heard of, but they might not have heard them all together in the same sentences, looking at the ways in which this comic character is using these philosophies from Renaissance Italy and ancient China.
Yeah. I mean, look, if when I was studying Greek mythology, when I was in school, if there would have been a book about religion and mythology and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I would have been all over it. I would have signed up for that class in a heartbeat. Like it, I think that it, both of them probably will be very good teaching tools, especially for the newer, younger generation who I don't even know if they even read like Beowulf or like the Odyssey or anything like that in school anymore. I know I read them when I was in high school,
Mhm.
but like I don't even know if they do that now. So I think that it's very good, like not even just like comparative literature. Like I love the back and forth because you're like, yeah, like Batman, Machiavelli, and I'm like, I know who that is, but like also I don't really know who that is. So like
Mhm.
I like doing I like that. I love when things you got to make it fresh for the young people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully there is kind of that back and forth where someone who comes in maybe interested in Batman, sees the connection with like, the Odyssey or something like that, and then maybe gets curious to go back and read the Odyssey because of what they see in that connection, or Beowulf, or Journey to the West, a classic novel in ancient China. So hopefully there is that back and forth, and it does draw more interest in some of the ancient stuff as well as the interest in comic characters like Batman.
I love it. I love it. I honestly, I'd probably read it, and I don't even like Batman. I don't even like Batman, but I would. Any more reason to find arguments to hate on Batman? I'm all for it.
Yeah,
100%.
it's definitely not a book that is it doesn't denigrate Batman,
Right.
but it doesn't hold him as an object of uncritical praise either. It looks at him like you would at any other characters you would have in literature, like Odysseus. Odysseus does some things that are really clever, really intelligent, but he also makes some really egregious mistakes at the
Yeah.
same time. He's a flawed figure, and so is Batman. And that's one of the other reasons why you can find him to be so interesting is because he is so completely flawed. He's so very, very human in that way. And
Hmm.
so rather than holding him up on a pedestal, I think you can learn more from him if you can really examine the ways in which he's a flawed hero at the same time.
Facts. Facts. Because at the end of the day, people might think that Batman is just he is a superhero, but he also is actually just a human being. So
Mhm.
that's that's kind of where you gotta. We're all just humans, and we all make mistakes and all that stuff. So I think I understand. I understand. I understand. Before we move on from Batman, who is your favorite Batman?
That's a great question. There have been so many, but probably it'd have to be Christian Bale in the Christopher Nolan series. Because that to me, those three films and the way that they fit together is a perfect example of a fresh take that also feels very, very connected to the older aspects of Batman at the same time. It's a story that's got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think that, like we were just talking, that Christian Bale approaches him not as a perfect superhero, but he shows those flaws, the struggles, the mistakes that Batman makes. And I like the ending of that film. It's probably been long enough where people who've wanted to see it will see it. I guess I won't get into too many spoilers, but the ending of the film really takes a fresh take on the Batman story that you don't see in a lot of others. So just in case there are people out there who haven't seen it, I'll leave it at that so I don't spoil what happens. Um, but I think the ending and the way that they approach it is both fresh and loyal to some of the other portrayals of Batman, that it comes off as a really interesting Batman story in itself.
Nice. Okay. I haven't seen any of those movies, so I don't know how it ends. So I probably will never know. So I think I think I saw part of The Dark Knight. Actually, yeah, I
Hmm.
watched like an hour of it go driving when my parents were dropping me off freshman or sophomore year at St. Joe. I was
Okay.
in the car watching Batman on my brother's phone, and I wasn't like super into it because like obviously I'm going to be a freshman in college, so like I'm
Yeah.
so
Other things
but
on your mind, yeah.
yeah. But I mean, from it looked really cool from what I had seen from it. Like I think a lot of people, which I mean I don't know, I haven't seen a lot of Batman movies, but Christian Bale probably does a good job of kind of like how a lot of people say that Tom Holland is like the perfect Spider-Man because he's a good Peter Parker and he's a good Spider-Man.
Hmm.
Whereas like Christian Bale is probably a good Bruce Wayne, but he's also a good Batman. And
Hmm.
he melded them like perfectly to where you're like, okay, we can make him as like this billionaire, but we can also make him as this superhero. So like
Hmm.
he meshed them perfectly together. So I
Yeah.
get it. I get it.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah. And the way that he approaches that, just to make one more comment about Christian Bale that's really interesting, is that Batman is the main identity. And so if anything, Bruce Wayne is a disguise for Batman rather than the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And him having to pretend to be Bruce Wayne rather than take on the alter ego of Batman is what I think him understanding that dynamic is also what makes his performance really, really good.
Nice. And Christian Bale's just great. He's such a
Hmm.
good actor. So good. Okay, now let's move on to Marvel.
Okay.
So I apologize. I have not read your books, but I would like to know what in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what religions and myths and things, because I know we've got the mythology with Thor, obviously.
Hmm.
But what else is there that other people probably wouldn't see that's not as obvious as Thor is?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot. It isn't necessarily just one particular mythology or one particular religious idea that goes through the whole text. It's a lot of different ones because what it seemed to me, or at least kind of, going back a little bit, what made me interested in writing that book was, first of all, in that phase one, and the book only covers the first three phases. So from Iron Man in 2008 up to Avengers Endgame is what the book covers. And when I first saw those films in phase one and saw already how they were making these interconnections between them with post-credit scenes and little touches to show that this wasn't just a couple of one-off movies, that there was some threads that were being knit and being connected together. That's what started to get me interested. But even more so, it was the fan reactions that when I saw the Avengers in 2012 for the first time in the theater, there are people who clapped and cheered when Iron Man and Captain America were on the screen together the first time. And then when the Hulk grabs Loki and pounds him into people were cheering and clapping for that. And so it seemed as though there was something that was hitting a little bit deeper than just entertainment. And so I wanted to keep an eye on that. And by the time we got through the first three phases and with the phenomena that was the Endgame movie, and the even bigger reactions that people had to moments in that film. There was something that was connecting to people beyond just a good story. There was something deeper here, and so I wanted to look into, with my background in studying mythology, is wanted to see if there were some of these perennial things that you find within mythic traditions. They were coming through the Marvel movies that you could see them taking a lot of older ideas and just making them new again. One of the biggest ones that I found was that if you look at the origin stories, particularly in the phase one, although some of the other characters throughout other phases have similar sorts of patterns, there's a lot of symbolic death and coming back to life elements, like Tony Stark when he has to remake himself into Iron Man the very first time in that cave in Afghanistan. He emerges out of that cave and it's like a rebirth when he's coming back into the world as a new person. The same thing with Steve Rogers when they turn him into Captain America. He's basically in this contraption that looks like a coffin. So he's basically his old self has in a way died and he's come back as something new. Thor dies for a few moments in the first Thor, and that's what proves him worthy to hold the hammer again, and so on and so forth throughout all of the different origin stories that you have. There's usually some sort of symbolic death and coming back to life as a new person, the way being reborn. That you find throughout a lot of different religious traditions as kind of this initiation into being in touch with this greater power. And then you go back into the world and you use that gift for the greater community and face other dangers that you find throughout a lot of different traditions. But that notion of death is one that kind of tracks throughout the rest of the Marvel movies. And the main villain they face over the three phases, Thanos, his name literally means death, and he wants to bring death to half the cosmos. So the whole three phases is really the struggle against death and against trying to hold back what is one of the fundamental facts about human life, that we all are mortal, we all are going to pass at one point or another. And it's trying to both hold that back, but at the same time come to terms with it. And it's a combination of both of those things that all the heroes deal with in one phase or another throughout the different movies, is figuring out how can we right this wrong, but also how can we learn how to accept it because it's also inevitable at the same time. So that paradox, which is part of human life, is one that gets played over and over within the MCU. And kind of big picture, that's the mythic ideal we find. And there are lots of allusions to and parallels and connection to specific myths that you find from around the world. But that's the big picture thing. The kind of the structure of the book looks at how those questions are dealt with from the beginning in 2008 all the way to 2019 when the first saga concluded.
I'm just thinking about all the Marvel movies. I'm just thinking about Endgame.
Yeah, yeah. It was quite a moment when I remember people in the theaters erupting when T'Challa and
Mhm.
Falcon and all the others came back for the first time.
What a time to be alive. If only we could go back. That was such a fun
Oh,
time.
why not?
Uh,
Relive all of that for the as if for the first time. Yep.
I can honestly, it's so crazy to me because I know how big a fan base Marvel has. And when I talk to people about it, and they're like, I've never seen any of the movies. What do you mean? They're a worldwide phenomenon. How
Hmm.
have you not seen any of it? Like, even my mom's seen some, but that's mostly just because I had it on the TV before she came in the house, and then I was in the middle of it, so she watched it with me. So she was forced to watch it. And then I also kind of gave her the breakdown of it, like, after every single movie. So,
Hmm.
because I had to tell somebody how I felt. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of emotions. So, what it sounds like is you saw in both Batman and in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you saw all these things that your degree kind of was like, "Hey man, you should you should look into this." And then you were just kind of like, "Okay, yeah, I'll take a look. It's fine." And then you just fell down a rabbit hole. And so
Hmm.
you had so much information, you're like, "I got to write a book."
That is pretty much 100% how it happened in both cases. Yep. Yep.
But did you have fun while doing it though?
Yeah, especially the both the Batman and Marvel books were a lot of fun, and because it's something that I could connect that I knew, or at least hoped that people would enjoy. Some of your other academic writing that you do, articles for academic journals and so forth, you do it because maybe you've got something to say, but if it reaches an audience, it's going to be of a really reified number of specialists out there. These sorts of things you hope will have a bigger message and they will connect more to stuff that people really, really enjoy. And so it's a different kind of writing. And I guess it also helped me to rediscover from when I was, because I've been a superhero fan since the time I was a kid. And so it helps you to reconnect with stuff that you've loved your whole life in a
Mm-hmm.
way. So they were a ton of fun, both of them to write.
I bet. Just elbow deep in superhero myths and religion, and you're just like you know, it's. I think it's with anything. Like it's you just got that little itch in your brain, and you're like, there's probably only like one or two things, and then as you're going through, you're like, oh, this is actually a lot more than what was expected.
Mhm. Yeah, it totally spirals after a while.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine, especially once you kind of get the flow going and you're just kind of like, okay, and then just the words just kind of pour out of you at one point, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. 100%. Um why did you decide to kind of did you do this for academic purposes or did you do it just because it was something that you really wanted to do and it just so happened to coincide with some academic things? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense.
Okay.
I guess a little bit of both,
Okay.
because there's a growing body of scholarship on popular culture out there,
Mhm.
and um, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I thought that I could actually make a academic contribution because when I looked around and to see if there were any other pre-existing published works out there from a scholarly perspective, most of the things I found were from a political interpretation, which is
Mm,
definitely there in a lot of the films because they were all made in the post 9/11 context. And so you can see a lot of that imagery there, totally there. And so that's something that you can definitely see within. I didn't think it exhausted the appeal of the story, though. I thought that it hit on different levels, and so I thought that there was still room to talk about the movies from another perspective and bring in some of these more ancient stories and look at how there's maybe a deeper message, maybe in addition to, alongside, beneath, maybe even beyond the political stuff that you find in there. It also explains why people who have lived without, having grown up seeing, I remember September 11th. The
mm,
students that I have in class these days don't because they were born after that. It's
yeah.
something in a history book to them, and they still love the Marvel movies. So
Yeah.
obviously there is something else that's speaking to them out of this. So I thought that this book could maybe provide some of the explanation for why it's had this longevity and why it's had that wider appeal. Um, so I did hope to make that contribution with that book. With the Batman one, there were again a lot of things that have been written about Batman, but I thought bringing in more of the mythic aspect would be a contribution that could be in there. Like for instance, looking at how you can see Odysseus or Monkey from Journey to the West, or the previous connections we're talking about with Machiavelli and Sun Tzu might also be in there. And there's that academic concern. I thought there was something I could contribute to the quote unquote literature, as scholars like to say. But on the other hand, I just thought that it would be a lot of fun. And you throughout graduate school, you focus on things that you really think are interesting at first, but then graduate school is a really different sort of stress environment
Yeah.
where after a while, it doesn't seem as much like this thing that you want to do as this burden that you have to complete. And so for a time, that really affected my way of thinking about writing. So for a number of years after graduate school, I didn't write the same way and I didn't really want to do the same kind of writing.
Hmm.
So when I started the Marvel book, it was like going back to the days when I really enjoyed writing again. Because I felt like I was writing for this academic audience, but I was writing for me too at the same time.
Hmm.
And that changed everything. My whole outlook changed at that time and it became fun again. And so going to then a Batman book felt like a continuation of that same exploration of this is kind of like a rebirth of who I really am in a way. And that kind of more fun-loving spirit, because you have to be so dreadfully almost dryly serious with some of the super academic stuff you write.
Yeah.
Whereas I tried it with these two books, have a foot in both worlds, where there's something academic I'm saying, but just all at the same time, this stuff's just fun too,
Yeah.
and don't not to lose that part of it.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, a lot of writers and authors and stuff that I talk to, they're just like, don't write for anybody else. They're like, if you want to write for fun, do it for you. Don't write it for a publisher. Don't write it for people to write it for you. Don't write it for anyone else. And I was like, that's really good advice. So that is something to remember, is that it's you do it because you like to do it, not because you have to do it. And a lot when I was at St. Joe, like I my degree's in creative writing. Um, I did a lot of creative writing, but I also, I had core and all of those up in like literature classes, and like had to write all these freaking research papers. And I'm like, oh God, I hate research papers. Like they're not that that's not how my brain works. And I freaking, oh my God, I just hate doing research. I could never be like an investigative journalist, or like I couldn't do anything like that because I'm not that invested in most things. So I couldn't do it. I knew my strengths. But when I got out of school and, I had to start working and all of those things, then I had to, uh, when I didn't really have a lot of time for writing because, you get out of school and then it's like, okay, now you got to go get a job.
Mm-hmm. Yep. yeah,
And you got to get a job that has benefits, that has this, that has that. You have to get an apartment, you have to have a car, you have to do this, you have to do that. And there's no time for anything fun. And then when the pandemic happened, I think for a lot of people, the pandemic kind of helped a lot of people kind of reset like their brains and do something that made them happy. So I sat down and I started writing and I was like, wow, is this what joy feels like?
mm,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
So I love that you, as we're talking about like rebirth and all that stuff in the MCU, like you have essentially like rebirthed yourself because
yeah,
I can only
yeah. It's
imagine
very,
what it's like to write for graduate school. I imagine very dry. and
yeah. Yeah, and you in those cases, it's really tough because, like when I was writing my dissertation, you've got a specific committee of people that you're writing for
Mhm.
that you have to keep happy. And if you don't produce something that they're willing to sign off on at the end, then it's all been for nothing. And so that's a lot of pressure. And already being someone who's got a pretty powerful inner critic who tries to tell me that the stuff that I'm doing is not as good as it could be and nobody's going to want to see it, adding that extra pressure it was not welcome. And so unlearning that took on a fair degree of time, right? And so the Marvel book, in a lot of ways, was really a salvation for me. It really was this great space that I could create where I could just be what I wanted to be and look into the things that I wanted to look into, ask the questions I wanted to ask, read the stuff that I wanted to read, watch Marvel films at this. I mean, I couldn't really imagine anything better than doing all of that stuff at the same time. So yeah, it was a great period, and to then be able to repeat that again with the Batman book now has been really really fortunate. So I'm very grateful for the chances that I've had to be able to and to be professionally in a place. I'm not in a publish or perish situation right now.
Mhm.
The position that I have is primarily teaching, and so when you find the space to publish, it can be on the topics that you want. And so I'm very grateful to have the opportunity, the space to be able to look into the things I want to look into and write the stuff that I want to write.
Yeah, Dr. Nichols said, "Oh, I can't hang out. I'm doing research, as in watching Marvel movies all weekend."
And it could be true. All those things could be true.
I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of research. I have to watch Christian Bale be Batman for the 15th time. I'm sorry. I have to research it. I'm sorry. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. There are a couple of other, essays for edited volumes on other topics. There's an essay that I'm working on that has to do with the later MCU
Ooh,
after Endgame. Similar things, similar sort of mythological elements.
nice. Okay.
And then that was solicited for an edited book that's going to have a lot of other chapters from other scholars and other authors on similar themes.
Ooh, that'll be fun. I love that. Do you make your students read your books?
I've never assigned my books.
Okay.
At least not. There may be portions that would be applicable in some cases.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about that. I do have. I announced that I have these books to students, and sometimes they're really interested and want to learn more. So I don't know. I'm still toying with that because the kind of classes that I teach, it might be partly applicable, but then again, I don't want to assign it if it's just trying to make them read my book. If they're genuinely interested, then they
Yeah,
can they can of course get hold of it like anybody else. But
that's
we'll see.
fair.
We'll see. Maybe I'll talk with some of the other people I work with and see if they think that it would work or not.
Well, so what do you teach right now?
I teach at Purdue University,
Hmm.
and so I'm in a program called the Cornerstone Integrated Liberal Arts program,
Okay.
and so I teach a class called Transformative Texts. And so we look at texts from the ancient to the modern world. And there's a list that we have that we can pick half of our books from, or at least half of our books have to come from that list. And there's things on there like Beowulf, like the Odyssey, the Ramayana in ancient India. And so you put together your class around a theme. And so I usually pick something around like heroes and monsters or things like
Mhm.
that. And we read stuff that maybe you would remember from St. Joe, things like Gilgamesh,
Mhm.
or things like that. And I try to have something more modern at the end so we can see how those ideas don't just stop at some point in human history. They keep getting revisited. And so I've used some Batman graphic novels before, and that was part of what generated the idea for the Batman book, was seeing how students reacted to that and the connections that we were able to make between the older and the newer stuff.
Nice. Okay. So a lot of sounds like your class is a lot of reading.
There's some reading it. There's writing as well. Now, in some cases, I've let them do, because we try to do a lot of different kinds of writing assignments, the reflections to the readings, but also in some cases, letting students, when we read a tragedy play, having them create their own tragedy play. When we read something that is maybe more creative, letting them create their own stories. Those kinds of, I try to bring in some things that are more interesting and different kinds of assignments. But yeah, you can't really get around the reading. We read maybe 4 to 5 books over the course of a semester, which
That's
which
fair.
isn't a ton, I don't think.
No, I mean, I can't say anything about reading when I own 500 books, literally.
Hmm.
So like I can't say anything about it. It just those even at in high school, college, all that stuff like Gilgamesh and the Odyssey and all that stuff. I'm just like, I don't want to read this again.
Hmm.
I don't want to have to deal with this again. And one question I'm going to ask, and it's going to have to do with your students, but have you had a student? Because, like you said, things tend to repeat, and people tend to see the same things when they read the same stories over and over again. Has there been a student or like a story or something that a student has like written or pitched to you, I guess, that you're like, wow, that's actually like a brand new take on whatever it is that you're studying.
Sure. Yes. I mean, students are always coming up with insights that are ones that, each new group of students is bringing a whole new set of life experiences. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're always coming up with new ways of thinking about things, new ways to apply things.
I
And
love that.
so I do try to leave space within the class to ask them, so what did you think of this text? You can tell me honestly, and they will give me their honest feedback. And sometimes I'll make changes to the course, whether to drop a reading or to
Mhm.
bring in something new. And you can oftentimes get a sense when something's working and when something isn't, when you
That's fair.
need to make those sorts of changes, right? Because I do want them, besides getting exposed to these, what we call transformative texts that can have a way to transform your way of looking at the world, I do also want them to have some fun at the same time. So
Yes.
I try to, besides some of these classics, to pick things that are transformative, but maybe they haven't seen in the past,
Mhm.
and then have that connection to the more modern world at the end, so we can see those lines between the beginning and the current days.
Okay. I love that. That's that is great teaching and shaping of the young minds. We appreciate that, especially since most of them's frontal cortex isn't fully formed
Mhm.
yet. I remember, I don't even remember, God, it was so long ago. It was whatever, I can't remember which core it was because core just was like our entire life the whole time. But I remember coming in to core and you were giving a lecture on like all the different like religions and kind of like comparing them. And I literally was sitting and I was like, great, a religion lecture. This is so great. But then you started talking and like going through all this stuff, and I was like, you blew my mind. I was like, oh my God. And then I was like calling people, like, I talked to my mom or my dad on the phone or something. And I was like, did you guys know that this, and this? And they were like, what? I was just like, oh. I was like, well, I had a lecture today, and the professor said this, and this, and they were like, okay, like, okay, my college education is paid for right now. Like I learned something, and I'm telling you what I learned, and I'm
Well,
excited to tell you
thank
what I
you.
learned.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, I did quite enjoy your lectures. Again, they were the ones that I did not sleep through, so or at least slept with my eyes open, because some of them some of them just weren't that fun. But yours were always very informative, but not like boring informative, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. That makes
Okay.
sense. Yeah. And with a few years distance from St. Joe, you can appreciate, or I can appreciate, having been in the mix at the time.
Mhm.
I always had this sort of defensive reflex whenever people would make what I now see as really insightful comments about the way the way things were done there. And at the time I would feel like I had to defend it because I was part of the faculty or whatever. Now with some distance, you can look back and go, man, we really, really could have rethought that whole concept of the lecture and so forth. If students are having to drag themselves into it, maybe it's not the best way to impart knowledge. Maybe there's another way we could go about it. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Faculty were sitting there in the auditorium too at the same time. So
Yeah.
maybe we just didn't want to admit what we all were seeing in front of us.
Hey, I mean, denial's a real thing, but it, I mean, I, it sucks that the school closed, but I think it really worked out for everybody in the end, honestly, because it kind of gave like, I mean, you're at Purdue now, so I'm sure you're probably stretching your wings a little bit there, and I know a lot of other professors like they went on, they either retired or they went on to other colleges, and like I'm sure you guys feel a little bit more freedom in these different places than having to be like bogged down by like the core classes at St. Joe, you know.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know.
definitely.
I'm not a professor, so I didn't know. I told everyone I was like I could never be a professor because we would never be in class ever. I like I'd wake up and be like, class is canceled. Sorry, I don't want to come in. Sorry, no class today. That
There's
would
other
be
stuff to do. There's other things we can be spending our time on here. Yeah.
like, guys, go outside and get some sun. It's beautiful outside. Go outside. Write about how you went outside. Email it to me. Text it to me if you want. I don't actually care. I would have been the worst professor. We would have never had class. Okay, so I want to talk about your first book
Okay.
because I personally don't know a whole lot about Buddhism or anything like that. So tell me about Malleable Mara Transformations of a Buddhist Symbol of Evil.
Sure. Okay. This one goes back a little ways because way back in 2002, when I started my master's program. So yeah, this is a long ways back.
Sure.
Is when I first got interested in this figure of Mara in Buddhism, and so within Buddhism, you have very famous stories of Siddhartha Gautama going on his journey, eventually becoming the Buddha. And one part of that story is where he has to face this being named Mara right before he becomes awakened. That's like his final test. There are these things that Mara does to try to stop him. He tries to tempt him away from becoming a Buddha, and then he tries to kill him with all of these different ghosts and goblins and monsters that he unleashes on him. And so I read that story and said, wow, this is really interesting. It seems like there's a lot going on in this. And so my master's thesis was about how visions of Mara in different kinds of Buddhism have changed from early Buddhism to more of a middle, what's called Mahayana Buddhism, which is a whole new brand of Buddhism. What accounted for those changes, why they would make this shift in representation of Mara. And then I took up a another take on the character when I did my dissertation, which is also on Mara, but I looked more at how Buddhists used Mara to make sorts of claims against some of their rivals in ancient India, particularly Brahmanic or Hindu traditions at the time. They used Mara to, like, for instance, in Hinduism, there are different gods and goddesses like Kama, the god of desire, Yama, the god of death, Indra, the thunder god, and how different elements of those you can see reflected in Mara. So it's like they've appropriated parts of these Hindu figures and turned them demonic in a way, which is a commentary, of course, on Hinduism at the same time as about some of the central aspects of Buddhism. So they're kind of demonizing they're rivals in a way.
Gotcha.
And so I used parts of the master's thesis and the dissertation and expanded it out to look even further at Mara's development from ancient India to more medieval times as Buddhism spread through Tibet and China and Japan. And then the last chapter ends with Mara in kind of like popular culture. So you've got Mara used by Western Buddhists for self-help books, like how if you are using the Buddhist way to try to avoid fast food, then Mara is the one who's trying to tempt you into eating fast food. And there was even a Western Buddhist who was a writer for Doctor Who in the 1980s who adapted a villain for Doctor Who that was based on Mara. It's actually called Mara and has a lot of the Mara symbolism in it. So there's those really fun parts in that last chapter of the book. But it's kind of this long discussion of where Mara started, what his original symbolism was, and how that changed and got adapted and redeployed by Buddhists kind of throughout Buddhist history.
Nice. Okay. Okay. So it just seems like you like comparing things to pop culture.
I do, and so I guess that last chapter of the Mara books kind of like since that was the one that I enjoyed writing the most. Maybe it was kind of maybe that should have been a clue to me at the time, like, hey, maybe that's where you ought to have been this whole time, you know.
Yeah.
And luckily I've had the chance to capitalize it from there. And people normally react to that story about Doctor Who the most. Are like, really? That's the thing you're describing all this stuff. Like, oh, that's okay. They go, really, Doctor Who? And they want to hear more about that part.
Yeah.
When I gave a conference paper on that, that was the one where that was like the biggest success that I had. Is people like, I had never heard that before. Tell me more. And so I think that it is kind of that connection to the world around us, stuff that you already know, and being able to hook that into the more ancient stuff. That's what seems to get people excited. And so that's maybe what I've tried to do in some of these other books.
Yeah. It was just younger you being like, hey man, so in a few years we're gonna be writing about Marvel and Batman and we're gonna be having a great time doing it. I love that. That is awesome. What I guess because I mean, I've always wondered what draws people to what they get their doctorate in. Because I mean, to get your doctorate, you have to go to school for like the longest time. Like, oh my god, you have to go to school for so long. And like, I couldn't imagine. Like, people ask me all the time, like, don't you want to like go get like your master's or something? Hell no, I do not. Absolutely not. 4 years in college was enough. That was I. I'm not a school person. I never have been a school person. But it's fine if some people are school people. What? And you obviously are a school person, considering you have a doctorate. What drew you to getting your degree in in religion, comparative, all that stuff? Like, what drew you to being like, I could probably study this for like 10 years?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. And um, it gets as you get older, I guess it gets a little bit more and more remote because you go through these different periods and eras in your life, and sometimes you think back and it makes sense, and sometimes it doesn't. But I guess the connecting line through all of it was when I was a little kid, I really liked just stories, and I liked writing my own stories at the time. And so I got into, and originally when I went to college, thought I was going to major in creative writing. And then I took a philosophy class and got drawn into, and also through some of the general education classes too, the bigger questions that stories would ask. And so I ended up majoring in philosophy. And then putting the two together, the philosophy and the creative writing, is really what landed me with mythology, because these myths and these ancient stories get into some of these deeper questions about, what it means to be human. And so from there, when I got into some of the stuff that I had never heard, growing up in Indiana, Buddhism was just not on the radar. And so when I first read those things, it was opening up this whole other world. And so the richness of Buddhist and Hindu mythology was this whole other thing to explore. with characters and dramas that I had never been exposed to. And so being able to put these things together really gave me a lot to look at as I spend all those years in school. And it was a lot of years in school. It was, 2 years for the master's and then a year where I was um, teaching some of my own classes, and then another 5 years to get the PhD. So it's a considerable amount of time that you have to invest to do it, and you have to really, really, really be steadfast and determined to get through a lot of the obstacles that get put in your way, the exams and the committees, and then writing the dissertation. But um, I guess to try to make more of a concise answer to your question, I feel like I've been all over the map with this one.
That's
But
okay.
I guess the through lines would be the power of stories
Mhm.
and the way in which they can impact people. The way you find that throughout history just kept me coming back and giving me the energy to continue in that. And then the leap from there to circle it back around, finding that same power in the stories and the characters that I loved as a kid, whether it was Batman or the Hulk or Iron Man or Captain America, has kind of brought it full circle in a way.
I love it. We love a full circle moment. Yeah, that's and totally okay to be all over the place when you're talking about something that you love because a lot of reasons that you love it are like you said, like a lot of it changes over time. Like I loved writing when I was younger because like I'm just getting all these feelings out. I'm getting all these feelings out. But then, as you like go through, you're like, wow, I actually have like these stories in my head that won't go away. I need to put them down on paper. And then as you like keep writing and keep doing the stuff, like you keep getting it out and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this might be something that I could actually do with my life. This is something that I really like to do. So it's okay to be all over the place about something that you love. Basically your life's passion, really. I mean, like you said, you spent a lot of time in school and like you went through your dissertation and all those papers and like all that stuff like that is love. That you have to love something to do something like that, and I can applaud you for going to school and loving something so much that you got a PhD in it and now you can give the knowledge that you have to a new generation of kids basically like every year, because it's a new swarm of people
Mhm.
every single year. Like I know at St. Joe it was like, oh, like when I was a freshman I was like, oh no, we're the fresh meat, like oh no. And then like once you get up there you're like, oh, they're just all these new babies coming in. It's just, but you don't really think about the kind of the, what's the word, I don't want to say legacy, but like the legacy that you leave when you know you are putting in these fresh minds. Because like I said, like I still remember the lectures that you gave at St. Joe, and that was t- 10 years, like 10 plus years ago. So um I just think it's really really cool that you loved writing and like you just loved these two things so much. Then you're like, you know what I'm gonna do, put them together, and then I'm gonna write these books about it, and it's gonna be something that makes me happy. So I really, I love that. So that's my long-winded way of saying it's okay to be all over the place about something that you're passionate about.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your kind words. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Dr. Nichols, I've literally had so much fun learning about religion and mythology and superheroes. It's been such a fun time. I would have never, but I don't have the brain that would be comparing stuff like that, to compare Batman and mythology and Marvel and mythology, because it's mythology's never been something that I was interested in. So it's really cool that your brain was like, I know what I'm gonna do. And that's really cool. And it makes for not only a fun time for you, but fun reading for people who need something, to people like me who need to compare something to something new. So that's us pop culture kids. We appreciate you.
I hope the connections are there, and I hope people enjoy them. That's the main thing. Is I do write it because I enjoy it, but I also hope that people out there are able to find something that they can take pleasure in with it too.
Yeah. Um, if you were to give someone who is an aspiring writer any advice, what would you say to them?
Oh yeah, well I would probably say a couple of things. I might reiterate what we've already touched on is that you've got to be authentic to yourself. Um, and you have a story that is just yours, and so to try to quiet that inner critic that's going to tell you that you shouldn't tell this story, say that this is your story and that you're the only one who can tell it. I know that that's a piece of advice that I've heard before, and it's completely true, I think. And to just write what you love, and that if you can do those two things, then you'll find your voice. So once you find your voice, then that opens up everything. So I know it's probably trite and probably things that people have heard before and been said before, but I think the things that are most true are the ones that get repeated like that.
Yeah. Okay. And then obviously the hardest question of the podcast. Who's your favorite Marvel superhero?
The Hulk. I think the Hulk. Want to get right down to it.
Nice. Why though?
Mm, Probably because the way he blurs some of those lines
Mhm.
and the unpredictability of it and going through his comic history, the way he's changed so much. On the one hand, he seems like a really, really simple character that he gets really angry, becomes this beast, gets mad, smashes stuff. But once you get beneath the surface of that, there's so much more that's there. I think it's that disconnect between what's on the surface and what's really underneath there, the complexity psychologically, what's going on with him uh, is something that when you look at the vast number of comics, and I don't know if a lot of this has been reflected necessarily in some of the movie adaptations of the Hulk, but when you look at the comics, there is a ton going on with that character, and so that's probably why I would pick the Hulk as my favorite.
That's fair. I don't think the Hulk has gotten enough love and attention that he deserves. I mean, we've only had one Hulk movie, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, but I mean, he's been. I think that we deserve a Mark Ruffalo Hulk movie. Personally, I think that we do, but that's just me. I mean, we got a freaking Black Widow origin story. How come we can't get a Bruce Banner?
Yeah, yeah, and I think I understand that there's some sort of copyright tie up between the different studios, but it is a big missing piece, I think, within the MCU. There's so much more that they could have done, and
Mm-hmm.
they may not have been able to because of some of these legal issues. But yeah, and if you go back even further and you look at the 2003 movie by Ang Lee, which has not gotten a lot of love from fans because it is really, really more on the darker side. It has some of that psychological richness to it. It's not the same sort of positive, joyous movie like a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, um, but it is pretty faithful to the way the character exists within the comics, and maybe that's partly also why they felt a little bit burned by some of that, thinking that people wouldn't want to go out and see that. But those who are fans of the character would definitely go out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I it literally if any Captain America movie that came out, I was going to see it. I didn't care.
Mhm.
I mean, I just went and saw Brave New World. I know that's not. I know it's Anthony Mackie, but he's still Captain America. So he still
Mhm.
he
Mhm.
still stands for everything
Yeah.
that Cap stands for.
Yeah, at least for me, I would say that, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for at least for my money, the three Chris Evans Captain America movies as easily the best character arc of the MCU. If you wanted to ask me, I think they were.
Yes, thank you. Captain America is my favorite, so that's that's perfect that you would say such a thing. I love Captain America, and Captain America and the Winter Soldier is my favorite Marvel movie. That is
Hmm.
my comfort movie. Like I turned it on. I just like quote it verbatim all the time. People are like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Nothing. I didn't say anything. I wasn't quoting Captain America and the Winter Soldier at all. I definitely was." Okay, Dr. Nichols, where can everyone find you on social media if you do that kind of thing? I don't know if you have like a writer page or like a website or anything like that, but where can the people find you?
Mostly you can find me on Facebook. I'm maybe not the most prominent social media wise, but I do you can find me on there. And both of these books, this one, the Religion and Myth in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you can find that on Amazon. There's both paperback and Kindle, so there are ebook options with that one. And the same thing with the Batman and the Classics. You can find it on Amazon, both in paperback and also ebook formats. So that's about it. I don't have any of the other fancy socials, so maybe I'm not that adept in terms of social media, but I'm not that hard to find. You can also find me just through email and so forth.
Absolutely. I will link Dr. Nichols' books in the show description. Do you have anything else you want to say to my bookies, as I'm calling them now, my bookies out there?
Oh, well, I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation too. I hope that I didn't ramble too much. And yeah, if you read the books and you want to drop me a line, you can also find me through Purdue. My email's easily found there as well. So I'd be happy to chat more on what you think about anything that you read. And hey, it's been great. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
All right. Everybody, let's give Dr. Nichols another. I know I keep calling you Dr. Nichols, but that's what we called you at St. Joe. So like it's it was like
Well,
super
you
hard.
can call me Michael too.
I
If you want to call
know.
me Michael, you can do it. I think enough time has passed where you could do.
I know. It's just one of those things where it's like such a hard habit to break, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's just and I never had you as a professor, so like it was just like you're like, "Oh, I want to talk about my books." And I'm like, "Okay, Michael." I'm like, "That sounds weird." That I don't that I
I get it.
one of my high school teachers, I still call her Mrs. Like I don't even call her by her first name, and I graduated high school literally like 15 years ago. So like it's very hard habit to break. But let's give Dr. Michael Nichols a round of applause for being here. Um, Everyone, please make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to Booking It with Jonna. I will be back next time with another fun, super fun, interesting episode of Booking It. Thanks for watching. Love you guys.